Private Dowding, the personal story of a soldier killed in battle by Wells. What's the name?
B?
Is it Wellesley?
Yeah.
By Wellesley Tudor Pole. Introduction. On Monday, 12 March 1917, I was walking by the sea when I felt the presence of someone. I looked round. No one was in sight. All that day, I felt as if someone were following me, trying to reach my thoughts. Suddenly, I said to myself, "It is a soldier. He has been killed in battle and wants to communicate." That evening, I happened to call upon a lady who possesses some degree of clairvoyant power. I had forgotten about the soldier until she described a man dressed in khaki sitting in a chair near me. He was gazing intently in my direction. She said he was mature, wore a small mustache, and seemed somewhat sad. Not a very intelligent character, apparently, but an honest one. I came home and sat down at my writing table. Immediately, my pen moved. Did I move it? Yes, in an involuntary sort of way. The thoughts were not my own. The language was a little unusual. Ideas were mainly conveyed in short, simple phrases. It would really seem as if some intelligence outside myself were speaking through my mind and my pen. Some of the ideas are not in conformity with preconceived notions of my own. The messages I received in this manner from Thomas Dowding, recluse, schoolmaster, soldier, are set down exactly as they reached me. Part 1, The Wilderness. One great truth has become my constant companion. I sum it up thus: empty yourself if you would be filled. Private Dowding, 12th March 1917, 9 p.m. I am grateful for this opportunity. You may not realize how much some of us long to speak to those we have left behind. It is not easy to get messages through with certainty. They are so often lost in transit or misinterpreted. So he's already speaking through, um, through, how do you pronounce his name?
Yes, yeah.
Wellesley. He's already speaking through Wellesley. So he's saying they are so often lost in transit, the messages, or misinterpreted. Sometimes the imagination of the receiver weaves a curious fabric round the thoughts we try to pass down. Then the ideas we want to communicate are either lost or disfigured. And we are these people in the next world. I was a schoolmaster in a small East Coast town before the war. I was an orphan, somewhat of a recluse, and I made friends, but slowly. My name is of no importance. Apparently, names over here are not needed. I became a soldier in the autumn of 1915 and left my narrow village life behind. These details, however, are really of no importance. They may act as a background to what I have to say. I joined as a private and died as a private. My soldiering lasted just 9 months, 8 of which were spent training in Northumberland. I went out with my battalion to France in July 1916, and we went into the trenches almost at once. I was killed by a shell splinter one evening in August. So he was only a soldier from July 1916 to August. Yeah, 1 month. 1 month. Killed by a shell splinter one evening in August, and I believe that my body was buried the following day. As you see, I hasten over these unimportant events, important to me once, but now of no real consequence. How we overestimate the significance of earthly happenings. One only realizes this when freed from earthly ties. So when you die, when you die is of no real consequence, it sounds like. and he's saying we overestimate the significance of earthly happenings. Like when you die, how you die, I don't know. It seems like, yeah, those things are important, but maybe he's saying that they're not important really after all. Well, my body soon became cannon fodder, and there were few to mourn me. It was not for me to play anything but an insignificant part in this world tragedy, which is still unfolding. Still unfolding. So at the time this was said, the World War One was still going on. That's the world tragedy. I am still myself, a person of no importance, but I feel I should like to say a few things before passing along. I feared death, but then that was natural. I was timid and even feared life and its pitfalls. So he feared life and he feared death. So I was afraid of being killed and was sure it would mean extinction. And by extinction, he means there would be no afterlife. There are still many who believe that. It is because extinction has not come to me that I want to speak to you. May I describe my experiences? Perhaps they may prove useful to some. How necessary that some of us should speak back across the border. The barriers must be broken down. This is one of the ways of doing it. Listen, therefore, to what I have to say. Physical death is nothing. There really is no cause for fear. Some of my pals grieved for me when I went west, when I died. They thought I was dead for good. This is what happened. I have a perfectly clear memory of the whole incident. I was waiting at the corner of a traverse to go on guard. It was a fine evening. I had no special intimation of danger until I heard the whiz of a shell. Then, following an explosion somewhere behind me, I crouched down involuntarily, but was too late. Something struck hard, hard, hard against my neck. Shall I ever lose the memory of that hardness? It is the only unpleasant incident that I can remember. I fell, and as I did so, without passing through an apparent interval of unconsciousness, I found myself outside myself. So immediately, as he fell, he was outside of his body. So apparently he was dead. I mean, just like immediately. You see, I'm telling my story simply. You will find it easier to understand. You will learn to know what a small incident this dying is. Think of it. One moment I was alive in the earthly sense, looking over a trench, parapet, unalarmed, normal. 5 seconds later, I was standing outside my body, helping two of my pals to carry my body down the trench labyrinth towards a dressing station. They thought I was senseless but alive. Senseless, I guess unconscious. I did not know whether I had jumped out of my body through shell shock temporarily or forever. You see what a small thing is death, even the violent death of war. I seemed in a dream. I had dreamt that someone or something has knocked me down. Now I was dreaming that I was outside my body. Soon I should wake up and find myself in the traverse waiting to go on guard. It all happened so simply. Death for me was a simple experience. No horror, no long drawn suffering, no conflict. It comes to many in the same way. My pals need not fear death. Few of them do. Nevertheless, there is an underlying dread of possible extinction. I dreaded that. Many soldiers do, but they rarely have time to think about such things. As in my case, thousands of soldiers pass over without knowing it. If there be shock, it is not the shock of physical death. Shock comes later when comprehension dawns. Where is my body? Surely I am not dead. In my own case, I knew nothing more than I have already related at the time. When I found that my two pals could carry my body without my help, I dropped behind. I just followed in a curiously humble way. Humble, yes, because I seemed so useless. We met a stretcher party. My body was hoisted onto the stretcher. I wondered when I should get back into it again. You see, I was so little dead, so little time had elapsed. that since he'd been dead. I was so little dead that I imagined I was still physically alive. Think of it a moment before we pass on. I had been struck by a shell splinter. There was no pain. The life was knocked out of my body. Again, I say, there was no pain. Then I found that the whole of myself, all that is, that thinks and sees and feels and knows, was still alive and conscious. I had begun a new chapter of life. I will tell you what I felt like. It was as if I had been running hard until, hot and breathless, I had thrown my overcoat away. The coat was my body, and if I had not thrown it away, I should have suffocated. I cannot describe the experience in a better way. There is nothing else to describe. It sounds like by throwing the overcoat away, uh, he's saying that that was the only way to continue, to keep going. You know, if I had not thrown it away, I should have suffocated. So it was like it was necessary to throw the body away to to continue going. My body went to the first dressing station, and after examination, was taken to a mortuary. I stayed near it all that night. Stayed near the body all that night, watching, but without thoughts. It was as if my being, feeling, and thinking had become suspended by some power outside myself. This sensation came over me gradually as the night advanced. I still expected to wake up in my body again. That is, so far as I expected anything. Then I lost consciousness and slept soundly. No detail seems to have escaped me. When I awoke, my body had disappeared. So he was near the body all night. He went to sleep, and I guess they moved the body. How I hunted and hunted. It began to dawn upon me that something strange had happened, although I still felt I was in a dream and should soon awake. My body had been buried or burned. I never knew which. Soon I ceased hunting for it. Then the shock came. It came without warning, suddenly. I had been killed by a German shell. I was dead. I was no longer alive. I had been killed, killed, killed. Curious that I felt no shock when I was first driven outside my body. Now the shock came, and it was very real. I tried to think backwards, but my memory was numb. It returned later. How does it feel to be dead? One can't explain because there's nothing in it. I simply felt free and light. My being seemed to have expanded. These are mere words. I can only tell you just this, that death is nothing unseemly or shocking. So simple is the passing along experience that it beggars description. Others may have other experiences to relate of a more complex nature. I don't know. When I lived in a physical body, I never thought much about it. My health was fair. I knew very little about physiology. Now that I'm living under other conditions, I remain incurious as to that through which I express myself. By this I mean that I am still evidently in a body of some sort, but I can tell you very little about it. It has no interest for me. It is convenient, does not ache or tire, seems similar in formation to my old body. There is a subtle difference, but I cannot attempt analysis. Let me relate my first experience after I had somewhat recovered from the shock of realizing I was dead. I was on, or rather above, the battlefield. It seemed as if I were floating in a mist that muffled sound and blurred the vision. Through this mist slowly penetrated a dim picture and some very low sounds. It was like looking through the wrong end of a telescope. Every Everything, everything was distant, minute, misty, unreal. Guns were being fired. It might all have been millions of miles away. The detonation hardly reached me. I was conscious of the shells bursting without actually seeing them. The ground seemed very empty. No soldiers were visible. It was like looking down from above the clouds, yet that doesn't exactly express it either. When a shell that took life exploded, then the sensation of it came much nearer to me. The noise and tumult came over the border line with the lives of the slain. A curious way of putting it. All this time I was very lonely. I was conscious of none near me. I was neither in the world of matter, nor could I be sure I was in any place at all, just simply conscious of my own existence in a state of dream. I think I fell asleep for the second time and long remained unconscious and in a dreamless condition. At last I awoke. Then a new sensation came to me. It was as if I stood on a pinnacle, all that was essential of me. The rest receded, all appertaining to bodily life seemed to be dropping away down into a bottomless abyss. There was no feeling of irretrievable loss. My being seemed both minute and expansive at the same time. All that was not really me slipped down and away. The sense of loneliness deepened. I do not find it easy to express myself if the ideas are not clear. That is not your fault. You are setting down just what I impress upon you. How do I know this? I cannot see your pen, but I see my ideas as they are caught up and whirled into form within your mind. By form, perhaps, I mean words. Others may not feel this loneliness. I cannot tell whether my experiences are common to many in a like position. When I first awoke the second time, I felt cramped. This is passing, and a sense of real freedom comes over me. A load has dropped away from me. I think my new faculties are now in working order. I can reason and think and feel and move. Once I read a book about this afterlife. It spoke of planes and bodies and cycles and auras. I think a man named Sinet or Simons wrote it. It purported to deal with the history and geography of this afterlife. I cannot confirm its descriptions from my own experience. I am simply myself, alive in a region where food and drink seem unnecessary. Otherwise, life is strangely similar to Earth life, a continuation, but with more freedom. I have no more to say just now. Will you let me return another time and use your mind again? I shall be so grateful. Okay, so real quick, when he said, "At last I awoke, then a new sensation came to me," this was after he fell asleep for the second time. It was as if I stood on a pinnacle, all that was essential of me. The rest receded. All appertaining to bodily life seemed to be dropping away down into a bottomless abyss. So bodily life, I was assuming, was earthly life. That whatever had to do with his earthly life was what was going down into a bottomless abyss. There was no feeling of irretrievable loss. So he didn't feel like he was losing anything, or that what he was losing he would never get back. And then my being seemed both minute and expansive at the same time. All that was not really me slipped down and away. All that was not really me. So whatever about him from his earthly life, he called it his bodily life, was what was slipping away, and what was left was what was really him. His sense of loneliness deepened. All right, and then he just talks about it's not easy to express himself. If the ideas aren't clear, it's not his fault, which is Major WTP Wellesley. And he's telling him, "You're setting down just what I impress upon you." And then he can see his ideas as they're caught up and whirled into Wellesley's mind. By form, perhaps, I mean words. Others may not feel this loneliness. Form, as they are cut up and whirled into form within your mind. By form, perhaps, I mean words. Others may not feel this loneliness. Again, the sense of loneliness that he had that deepened when he woke up the second time, other people may not feel this way when they go to the next world. I cannot tell whether my experiences are common. So he doesn't know if it's typical. If his passing away is typical, are common to many in a like position. When I first awoke the second time, I felt cramped. This is passing, so how he's feeling at the time he's talking to him, that's going away. And a sense of real freedom is coming over him again in the next world. A load is dropped away. So remember when he said that all appertaining to bodily life seemed to be dropping away. So now a load is dropped away from me. I think my new faculties are now in working order. So the faculties that he needs for the next world now seem to be in working order, like he can use them. Like whatever faculties he needs for the next world, the stuff that's dropped away he doesn't need, and then the new faculties he feels like are now in working order. I can reason and think and feel and move. So the things that he needs to move around and think and do in the next world are now ready. And then he talks about a book that he read. I guess he found some truth to it. It purported to deal with the history and geography of this afterlife. I cannot confirm its descriptions from my own experience. I'm simply myself, alive in a region where food and drink seem unnecessary. Otherwise, life is strangely similar to Earth life, a continuation but with more freedom. So more freedom in the next world. I have no more to say just now. Will you let me return another time? Use your mind again. I should be so grateful.